I awoke in the desert, a figure looming above me. "You picked one hell of a place to take a siesta, mister," the tall man said, straightening up and looking towards the horizon, one large hand stroking his handlebar mustache thoroughly. He was dressed head to foot in black, a large pistol hanging low on his hip. "What's it to you?" I said, a little sourly, not happy at being once again in another desert. At least this one was blessedly free of radiation. Still, the sun burned my skin where it sat, white-hot fire in the hazy blue sky. The man turned back to me, pulling his long duster coat to one side, revealing a glittering golden star. "The name's Earp," he said, looking me up and down. "Wyatt Earp. I'm the law around these parts. You want to watch your lip around me, boy. I ain't known for my patience. Why don't you tell old Wyatt why you're doing out here reeking of booze on the outskirts of town?" "What town?" I blurted. "Holy Mother of Christ," he spat. "You answer every question one of your own. Tombstone, boy. Stop your delay and answer the question. You going into town drunk?" His hands were now hovering over his pistols. My mind was racing, tripping over itself. Tombstone, Wyatt Earp. Jesus, I could hardly believe it. He was just about to make a grab for me when I blurted out the first lie that came to mind. "Drunk. I got drunk as hell. Must have staggered out of town to take a piss, just keeled over," I said, trying hard to play the simpleton. "From town," he said, his hazy blue eyes narrowing. "And just when did you hit town? See, I know just about every resident of Tombstone. You ain't one of them." For once, I couldn't think of a single answer, but a gunshot suddenly rang out, and a woman screamed in pain. "God damn it," he said, whirling towards the town. "Those goddamn sons of bitch cowboys are in town again." And just like that, he hurried away, stalking back towards Tombstone as if I no longer existed. Sagging with relief, I mopped at my brow, glad to be out of his presence. "Impressive, isn't he?" a voice growled from behind me. I whirled around, coming eye to eye with a huge mountain lion that had seemingly materialized out of nowhere, and now sat on a nearby rock, its head cocked to one side as if wondering how good I would taste. "He made it into heaven by the skin of his ass," Lucifer continued. "What a prize he would have been, such a challenge to break." "Oh well," he sighed. "You can't always get what you want. It's sometimes what you need," I muttered. "Ah, a Stones fan, are you, Mr. Davis? Personally, my favorite is Sympathy for the Devil." He chuckled obscenely. I wasn't really listening to him anymore, but I had fallen to my knees, frantically digging in the surrounding sand. "What are you doing?" he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "I'm looking for the knife," I shot back at him. "What do you think I'm doing?" "Digging for grubs?" he said, somewhat loftily. "Either way, the thing that you are so desperately seeking isn't there." I stopped digging. "Then where the hell is it? I want to get this over and done with." He looked back at me, and then his feral green eyes narrowed before lunging forward with blinding speed. I felt a terrible pain. I sat down hard, my chest bleeding. I cried out as I looked down at my flayed open chest, the gleam of bone shining wetly in the midday sun. But already the skin was beginning to knit and heal. Lucifer sat there silently watching me heal until finally I managed to crawl to my feet. The instant I stood, he gave me more of the same, only this time shattering my ribcage, sending me flying into the sand in an explosion of blood and bone. I lay there for some time, feeling my body slowly begin to heal and reform. Finally, when I was whole again, I crawled to my knees and I sat there before him, my head bowed low. At last, he began to speak. "I understand your need to wrap up this little adventure of ours, but always remember one thing, Mr. Davis. I am the master, and you are my dog. Don't you ever bark at me again. Now, get to your feet." I did as I was bid, keeping my eyes on my feet. "Look at me, Christian. Look at me and tell me who you serve." "You, my lord," I said, and a kind of sadness came over me, as if I had somehow disappointed him and was in need of making amends. But I wasn't sure if this feeling came from me or was just another one of his sly tricks. "And why is it you serve me so faithfully?" There was something in his voice now, a kind of longing. Taking a deep breath, I did the only thing I could. I told the truth. "Because I fear you," I stammered. "I fear you more than anything I've ever known, more than the wrath of God Almighty himself." He grinned then. "Well, for now, that is enough. You asked a question. Would you like an answer?" "Yes, Lord." "Then ask again, and this time, mind your manners when you speak to me." "The knife, my lord," I said, bowing low. "Where's the HellBound blade?" "Follow," he growled, leaping from the rock and heading deeper into the desert. We walked for hours, the sun giving way to shadows as we entered the shade of a small rocky outcrop. "In there," he said, nodding towards a small cave-like entrance surrounded by sagging timbers. "What's in there?" I got up the nerve to ask, but he ignored me, loping inside. The place was pitch black, and I stumbled, my shoulders brushing the rough-hewn wall. "Open your eyes, Mr. Davis. Really, open them. Remember the power I bequeathed you at Draven's castle. Open your eyes and see." And just like that, the veil fell from my eyes, and I could see clear as day in the deep darkness of this forgotten mind. "Very good, Mr. Davis, very good indeed. You have such power. Now, more than ever, you must stop and learn to use it." With that hanging in the air between us, he hurried on ahead. A few minutes later, I came upon him, sat staring at a pile of massive boulders, broken timbers, and dusty rubble, blocking the depths of the shattered mine. "What now?" I asked, standing beside him. He turned to me, his tongue lolling. "The knife is behind that mess of boulders. If you still feel you need it, that is, then you must retrieve it for yourself." "What?" I exclaimed. "And how the hell do you expect me to do that? And why is it buried there anyway?" I said, pointing an accusing finger at the fallen boulders. "Because I put it there." He grinned. "Playtime's over, Mr. Davis. If you still feel you need that knife, then you must get it for yourself." "What are you talking about? Of course I need it. I mean, how else can I reap this final soul?" "How indeed," he said, staring at me blankly. I knew there would be no answers forthcoming, and so began to mooch around the edges of the fallen boulders, looking for a way inside. At my touch, a light burst into being, shining through a narrow hole from the other side. Wincing, I put my eye to the hole. The blade had burst into light in my presence, and lay amongst the debris and rubble just on the other side. At the sight of it, I felt a terrible longing and pounded at the hard rock in frustration. "I see you found a way through," Lucifer chuckled. "Some entrance." I turned on him. He shrugged. "Do you remember Albert Foster?" "How could I forget?" I grimaced. He had been the second soul I had captured, a corpse peddler that had haunted the fog-strewn streets of Victorian London. "What about him?" I continued. Lucifer sighed. "Do you remember how he escaped when you confronted him that second time?" "You mean after he set me on fire with flaming fists?" I shuddered, still remembering the god-awful pain. "Just so," Lucifer chuckled. "You were quite the mess that particular day when awful Albert had got through with you, but we aren't talking about that. We're talking about how he escaped you the second time." "The cockroaches," I said, remembering Albert's terrible transformation. "Just so," Lucifer said, slinking closer until I could feel his hot breath against my face. "The cockroaches." "But I can't do that," I stammered, looking at him incredulously. "That was power given to him by Asmodeus, the one who orchestrated the breakout in the first place." "Ah, yeah, Asmodeus. We can talk of him another time, but tell me, Mr. Davis, do you believe Asmodeus's power is greater than mine. Or even your own. My own. Yes, your own, he snapped, his tail swishing angrily. Are you not my chosen? Haven't I promised you all the powers of hell? Must I now explain everything to that dull mind of yours when we are close to the end, or is it only fear and pain you understand and respect? If so, let me encourage you. If you don't transform and get through the wall, then I'm going to rip your balls off, he snarled and showed razor-sharp teeth. I'm going to tear you open again and again until you either do as I bid, or you go insane with the pain of it all. But I don't know how, I cried out, backing away from him. He sighed then, some of the anger melting from him as he sat on his haunches. It's rather simple, Mr. Davis. Just bring your will to bear. Wish it to be so, and it will be. Want it like you wanted the deaths of so many of your victims. Tap into the primal desire of yours. That desire that you have so long tried to convince yourself is no longer there. That fury and bloodlust, the hatred. Let it loose. Become the creature you were always meant to be. I turned from him and glared down at the hole. He was right. He was always right. There was no longer any need to hide, no desire to change. I was already a lost soul, my days condemned to eternal torment. The worst that could happen had happened. I'd been forsaken by both man and God, and there was literally nothing else to lose. Feeling that old hatred well up in me, building until I thought that I would burst with it, I directed my will, and I felt myself begin to change until I wasn't one but many, a scurrying mass with 1,000 eyes that crawled up the wall and through the small opening, reforming back into human form on the other side. Howling in triumph, I scooped up the glowing blade. Lucifer answered my howl with one of his own, an ear-piercing shriek that brought me back to my senses. I had the blade, but I was now trapped. If I took on my insect form again, I would no longer be able to carry the knife. Suddenly, I was furious that mere stone would dare to stand against me. Bringing my will to bear, I slammed my fist into the rock, causing the whole mass to explode outward in a shower of dust and rubble. Lucifer just managed to leap out of the way, and there came a low rumbling from deep in the ground. Run, Mr. Davis. If you don't want to spend an eternity buried alive, run! I did as he said, both of us sprinting for the exit. We managed to jump free just as the whole mess came shattering down in an explosion of choking dust and flying pebbles. Subtle, Christian, he glared at me, shaking dust from his coat. Very subtle indeed. Sorry, I said, somewhat sheepishly, feeling suddenly exhausted where I sat, covered in dust and filth. Lucifer patted over and licked my face with a long, wet tongue. Don't worry. Takes some getting used to. You'll find it exhausting at first, but your batteries will recharge. In fact, now that the process has started, you'll only get stronger. But why? Why have you given me these gifts now when we're so close to the end? Who says it's the end? This is only the beginning. There's so much you don't know, so much I need to tell you, but there's no time now. So we must finish what we started. The final soul, you mean? Yes. The man you're looking for is just east of here at a cliffside encampment. He and his bunch of bandits have taken over a small town. It's from there that they strike terror and discord throughout the land. The man you seek is Harvey Dillon, a murderer, rustler of cattle. In life, he was heavily into torture. The things he did to the flesh of victims could rival the horrors of hell. And now he's back and so much worse than before. Not that I give a fig for his victims, but he belongs to me. He belongs in hell. And that's what you're going to do, Mr. Davis. You're going to bring him back to us, aren't you? I stood up and brushed away the last of my humanity. You're goddamn right I am. We walked through the night, Lucifer padding along beside me. He seemed stronger now, like he could stay in this world longer than before, even if it was only trapped in the body of a lower-base creature. The first rays of dawn were just starting to stain the night sky when he heard the sound of a rider coming on hard behind us. Suddenly, Lucifer grabbed up my sleeve and dragged me down into the underbrush. "The hell are you doing?" "Be silent," he hissed. "Don't move, don't make a fucking sound." Moments later, a horse galloped into view, frothing at the mouth as the rider pulled hard at the reins, bringing the big mare to a halt. A pair of dusty boots hit the ground. From our position, I could just make out the man's lower half. He wore a long, dust-smeared overcoat. A shiny revolver hung low on his hip, and in one scarred and battered hand, he held a torn-looking Bible that seemed to be missing many pages. The man's feet turned as if he were scanning his surroundings, and my body broke into a cold sweat, fear worming its way into my guts. "Therefore," the man intoned, "as the tongue of fire burns the dried grass, you shall go down in flames for your roots. They are rotten, and your blossoms shall be nothing more than dust on the wind. For you have forsaken the Lord thy God and rejected his laws. Henceforth I shall stretch out his hand against you. I'll find you," he muttered. "I'll find you, and I'll send you back to hell from whence you came." That said, he mounted his horse and rode away. I let out a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding, and I sagged down the tension, leaving my body. "Who is that?" I said, turning to Lucifer. "Trouble," he replied, glaring at the receding figure. "A preacher driven mad by the light of God. A joker in the pack, the eye in the middle of a storm. God's feeble attempt to divert the course of prophecy. Many times I've tried to rid myself of the thorn in my side. Once, when his wife's cold dead fingers closed around his throat, I thought I had him. But his love for God was greater, and it prevailed." "Let me kill him for you, my lord." "No," he snapped at me. "You must leave him alone. Go nowhere near him, not unless he forces a confrontation." "I must leave you now," he suddenly blurted. "This body can no longer hold my magnificence. Just over the horizon is the town. Go there. They know of the man you seek. For now, farewell." And just like that, he was gone, leaving the corpse of a mountain lion behind, which immediately began to rot and smoke. I walked on, the sun beating down on me like an anvil, until at last I crested the cactus-strewn hill and looked down at the town below. It looked more like every town ever seen in a spaghetti western. All bleached timbers, false storefronts, horse-shit-strewn streets. Slowly I made my way down to the outskirts of town, not really sure where I was going or who I was supposed to be talking to. But this was far from the first time Lucifer had left me with my dick swinging in the wind. I just have to make the best of things. Besides, with my newfound powers, I was feeling more confident than ever before. As I walked more fully into town, people seemed to be giving me sideways glances and quickly scurrying away. "What the hell?" I murmured, just before I felt a sudden blow to the back of my head. It all went dark. I awoke in a darkened cell. There was blood on my hair, but of course no wound. Quickly I felt around and found the HellBound blade still stuffed down the back of my jeans. There came a sudden rattling of keys and a squeaking of a door. The corridor was lit by a flickering oil lamp. A man stood outside my cell. He was willow-thin, with a shock of red hair, and wiry-looking side chops, a silver star glittering on his narrow chest. "You got some nerve showing your face back in this town, Andy Wayne, after what you did to that whore over in Ed's place. Then burned down the church and all. There's a whole mess of people right now over at Ed's drinking it up and planning a hanging party. And you know what, Andy? I was pretty fond of Jessie before you messed up her face. Guess you can call me a regular." He grinned, a gap-toothed smile. "So I reckon I'm just going to let them hang you, partner. Now, how do you feel about that?" "Well," I said, stumbling along the bars and feigning exhaustion, I think you're a pock-faced son of a whore, and the best part of you ran down the crack of your mama's ass, I said. I spat in his face and began to laugh hysterically. His face went first red, then purple as he fumbled his keys in the lock, revolver in hand. Boy, I'll beat you black and blue when we was kids, and I want to beat you down again. There won't be much left of you for that hanging party, you better believe that. Thrusting open the door, he charged in, smashing the gun barrel across my face. I grinned at him through smashed teeth and a torn mouth, grabbing his hand and smashing it against my knee, sending his revolver flying. His wrist snapped like a rotten twig. He bellowed in pain, but I caught him up by the throat. I pulled the knife from around my back. I plunged it into his shoulder before twisting it cruelly, dragging it out and thrusting it into his thigh. Screaming, he sagged and fell to the floor, grasping at his bleeding leg and rocking to and fro. I kicked him over and over again, before kneeling down beside him, my knife at his neck. I'm looking for the Dillon gang, I growled, pressing the blade hard against his bobbing Adam's apple. You would know where said banditos would happen to be, would you? The light of hope gleamed in his eyes. Sure, he gasped. They're camped up at High Canyon Ridge. They took over Heston's ranch. Hell, they took over the entire village. Where is it? This High Canyon Ridge. 2 days east of here. Just follow the river out of town. You can't miss it. Please, Andy, don't kill me, okay? Sorry. Andy ain't home, I grinned, dragging the knife across his throat. His hot blood spurted over me. Quickly, I stood up and headed outside. There I was greeted by the townsfolk, flaming torches held aloft. It seemed like there was a gun or a rope dangling from every hand. I looked down at my bloody clothes and grinned at them. Just give me a second to explain. There was a cry of outrage and bullets began to fly, sending me crashing backwards as I was peppered with hot lead, my shirt and chest exploding in a welter of blood. The last shot rang out, and there was silence. Until I stood back up. That's when the women began to scream and the men began to curse. Quickly reloading, some of them took to their heels. You want to play? I grinned down at them through bloody teeth. Okay, I can do that. Let's play. Bringing my will to bear, I summoned the hellfire to my hand and released it amongst them. The flames jumped from one person to the next, lighting them up, their skin melting, running like hot wax as they thrashed and screamed. And when it was all over, I walked amongst them, their ashes stirring on the ground in the cold night wind as I followed the river out of town. The morning found me by the riverside, washing ashes and blood from my clothes. There was a splash, and a nearby beaver pulled itself out of its free-flowing waters. Lucifer? Is that you? Who else? The beaver chuckled. Just before its head blew apart into about 300 pieces, spattering my face with blood and gore. I spun around. There was a cowboy rushing down the hill towards me, his one good blue eye blazing with pure hate. I got you now, you son of a bitch! He fired off another round, but stumbled just as he pulled the trigger. The shot went wild, but the bullet, which I was pretty sure was meant for my head, buried in my shoulder. The pain was enormous, like nothing I'd ever felt before. It spun me around, dumping me into the freezing river, the current pulling me away. The cowboy stood on the riverbanks, barking off round after round. Another bullet clipped my ear, and I ducked under the flowing water. Whoever he was, the son of a bitch was deadly accurate. You can't hide from me, boy, the mad preacher screamed as I rounded the bend. You can't run from Jacob Masterson. God's gonna cut you down. You hear me, you son of a bitch? God's gonna cut you down. I stayed in the river for some time, letting the hard current drag me miles between us before I finally managed to climb out into the opposite side of the riverbank. There I collapsed, and I checked my wounds. They hadn't closed, but burned like acid, small wisps of smoke rising from the wound in my shoulder. A crow landed on my outstretched boot and hopped up my leg as it drew close to my face. I could hear it muttering to itself. Bible-thumping, Jesus-loving son of a bitch, it cursed. Of all the goddamn nerve. Lucifer, I gasped. Is that you? Ask me that just one more fucking time. he called in my face, and I swear by the bloodiest depths of hell I will peck out your eyes. Kate. I threw up my hands in surrender, wincing at the pain in my shoulder. Why isn't it healing? I said, flopping back down. Because that crazy asshole shot you with silver. Blessed silver, actually. We need to get this out of you before the poison spreads to your body and it starts to shut down. Okay, now hold still. Suddenly, his head darted down and he buried his sharp beak into the raw wound. I screamed in agony as he rooted around. After what felt like an eternity of pain, he pulled free the smoking silver slug and spat it onto the ground. Immediately, the wound began to close and the pain began to first fade, then eventually vanished altogether. I was instantly on my feet, suddenly ferocious. I'm going to kill that mad motherfucker, I growled. I'm going to cut him into little pieces and piss on his bones. No, you're not. I told you to stay away from him. Like I have a choice. I cut him off. He's tracking me somehow. He's fucking tracking me. Perhaps, he replied, but Masterson is not the target you're here for. Dylan, he must die now. Today. Time grows short. But it has to be today. Why? I asked. Why today? Stop your infernal questions, he snapped at me. Just get on with your job. I will run interference on Masterson. Once the job is done, he will become irrelevant to the whole thing. What thing? I asked him, knowing he was keeping something from me, but I didn't quite have the nerve. There's a bridge about a mile down the river, he said, lighting up upon a nearby branch. Cross the bridge. Follow the winding path out of the canyon. The place you seek sits upon a nearby ridge. That said, he took to the sky. Soon he was nothing more than a black dot on the horizon. Sighing, I clambered to my feet, brushing myself down and quickly hurried away, keeping my ears open for the sound of the pounding hooves. Whoever that Masterson character was, he had Lucifer unnerved, and I wanted no more part of him. Best to just finish up here and get back to the safety of hell. Less than an hour later, I came upon the ridge, which was nothing more than a few splintered planks held together with frayed ropes. The river flowing fast beneath. Taking a deep breath, I sprinted across, wincing at every creak and crack until finally, I was across. The rocky sides of the canyon rose up before me. There was an narrow path leading straight through the canyon's sheer sides, and another small track that wound its way up a flat-looking ridge. I could just make out the sides of a small building and the muted sounds of human voices. Okay, I mumbled. Up we go. The track itself was narrow, perhaps wide enough to accommodate a single horse, not much more. I was about halfway up when I noticed the vultures circling overhead and the faint smell of smoke that blew on the light breeze. Shit, I cursed, drawing the knife and coming on the run. By the time I hit the top, I was breathing heavily and drenched with sweat. Just like Lucifer had said, there was a village here atop this flat plateau, or at least there had been. Now there was nothing more than a smoldering ruin, bodies of men, women, children, and even a few horses lay scattered about. Their poor, broken bodies smoking in the midday sun. "Welcome to hell, partner," a voice rang out. A wild-eyed man stepped from one of the charred and blackened ruins. He was shirtless, his jeans torn and bloody. In one shaking hand he held a revolver leveled at my chest, in the other, a half-empty bottle of whiskey. "The hell happened here?" I asked, lowering the knife. He laughed then, the light of madness dancing on his bloodshot eyes. "Harvey's what happened here," he spat. "Killed everyone, the whole village, his crew. I seen things," he said, tears rolling down his face. "Things no man should ever see. Harvey, he had powers. He burned everyone, and that laughter," he mumbled. "That god-awful laughter." He shook his head, as if trying to rid himself of the memory of it before raising the bottle and gulping down the fiery liquid. At last, the bottle was empty, and he cast it away from him. "I hear it, mister. Even when I sleep, even drunk." He chuckled obscenely. "I can hear it right now." Suddenly, he put the revolver to his head. "No!" I screamed, lunging at him. But he had already pulled the trigger, the sound of the shot booming around the canyon's walls. "Son of a bitch!" I screamed, kicking his flopping corpse more out of frustration than any real anger. Whatever had happened here, I had missed it. And Harvey Dillon had moved on, leaving his crew behind, or what was left of them anyway. Putting the knife away, I stomped across to the only remaining intact building, the one I had observed from the bottom of the trail. I went through the open door, but recoiled in horror as a swarm of flies fled before me. There were bodies here, 3 of them, hanging from the ceiling. It was impossible to make out the sex, they were too torn up for that. They had been skinned and butchered, bone and flesh gleaming wetly, and even I cursed, hoping like hell they'd been dead before this terrible torture had taken place. Quickly I left, slamming the door behind me. "What now?" I mumbled to myself. "Where the hell did you go? How the hell am I supposed to find you?" Lucifer's words came back to me. It has to be now. Today. Worried, I looked at the midday sun. God only knew what he would do to me if I failed him. Sitting down in the blowing sand, I once again remembered Lucifer's words. "Will it, and it will be." Concentrating, I cast my will into the wind, feeling my awareness searching for Dylan's rotting soul. And there it was. Just west of here, a dark figure in the desert sat by a blazing campfire, gleaming eye hooded beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "I have you now, asshole," I growled, leaping to my feet. Even now I could feel him like a magnet pulling me like a iron filling toward him. Strolling over to one of the dead horses, I laid a hand upon its smoking flesh. "Rise," I commanded. "Rise and serve me." At first, nothing happened. Gritting my teeth and bringing all of my hate and rage to bear, I thrust it forward into the dead creature that began to shudder and twist. At last, its deflated eyes began to fill until they rolled white and the dead thing stumbled to its feet. Not wasting any time, I grabbed at its tattered mane and jumped on its back. Digging my feet into the blackened skeletal sides, immediately the creature began to gallop. Guided by my will, we raced down the canyon side, the stench of burned flesh and blood covering me like a comforting haze. Night was coming on fast when I spotted his flickering campfire in the near distance. Climbing from my mount, I clicked my fingers, turning it to dust in the wind. I sat down, crossed my legs, and called out to Lucifer, wanting to know more about my quarry before the final confrontation. Suddenly there was a sharp bite on the back of my hand. Cursing, I looked down and saw a huge, hairy tarantula. Poisonous as ever, I see. But the spider did not answer, but merely started to crawl away. Still, the message was clear. Get on with the job. Sighing, I got to my feet and squashed the little bastard, just out of pure spite, before continuing onwards. Not even bothering with stealth, now comfortable with my newfound powers, I approached the dying campfire and the man hunkered down by its flickering light. "So you finally came for me," the man chuckled. "The devil's—" "Yeah," I interrupted. "The devil's bitch. Lapdog is Satan. I've heard it all before, my friend." "You're such a fool," he laughed, casually climbing to his feet. "Didn't you ever wonder what's really going on here?" "I know exactly what's going on," I smirked at him. "I know all about it. Rebellion of Hell. Asmodeus, setting you free to undermine my master." He laughed then and slapped his knee. "Rebellion in Hell. Like they would ever dare to go against your master," he said mockingly. "Well, you're here, aren't you?" I said, not falling for his ruse. "You escaped. Now I'm here to send you back." "Escaped," he said, shaking his head sadly. "Not escaped. Set free. Nothing happens in hell without Lucifer say so." But why?" I stammered. Why would he set you free? You and the other 4. That's the question. He grinned at me, but there was a great sadness in his eyes. We're pawns, my friend. Pawns on the great chessboard of eternity, so let's play. And I believe he grinned slyly. It's my move. Suddenly he raised his hands and a great maelstrom began to blow, whipping up in the sand. Quickly I threw up my hand to protect my face. Even through the biting sand I could see him twist and turn as he went through some terrible transformation. Other figures rising up from the endless sands, and just like that, the wind dropped, and a herd of crimson-eyed horses suddenly stood before me. With a great snorting and thundering of hooves, they raced towards me, meaning to trample me to dust. A shot rang out, and the lead horse went down, exploding into hardened sand. Another shot rang out, another one, and another of the demons went down. Something hit me high in the chest, throwing me to one side. Blood and bone exploded. I landed hard on my back, unable to breathe. It was that mad preacher, the one Lucifer had called Jakob, riding like the wind towards the demon herd. The reins of his big mare clamped between his teeth, a pistol in each hand, laying the very wrath of God upon the now terrified horses who had turned to flee. Clambering to my feet, feeling the terrible silver spread through my body, I saw him fire a last shot, hitting the transformed Harvey in the side of the neck. Instantly, the rest of the herd turned to dust, and Harvey lay in the dirt, bleeding hard, gravely injured, but still very much alive. Masterson took no notice of him, but whirled his big mount around, coming straight for me. "Come on then, you son of a bitch," I growled, raising the now burning blade. Grinning, Masterson fired off another shot, and the blade in my hand exploded. It was as if I heard every soul in hell cry out at its destruction. Sighting down the barrel of his gun, Masterson pulled the trigger, intent on my destruction, but his eyes widened in shock as his gun clicked empty. With a cry of triumph, I swung what was left of the shattered blade at him, burying it in the back of the mare's chest. The horse screamed and went down with an explosion of blood and sand, trapping its rider beneath. Quickly I staggered over, blood pouring from the terrible wound in my chest, but the preacher had already managed to kick himself free. Even as badly injured as he was, his fingers were already doing their deadly dance as he quickly reloaded his smoking revolvers. With a cry, I charged at him, but he grinned, raising the revolvers, and I knew I was dead. But suddenly he howled in pain and began to dance around, firing his guns into the dirt that was now somehow crawling with large black snakes that hissed and struck at him. Still, he shot them, blowing them into tiny pieces, and when his guns clicked empty, he stomped them into the dirt, growling and spitting curses. But even his terrible vitality could not last, and he went down under the onslaught of the deadly venom. The snakes all around him began to squirm and meld into a giant serpent with glowing red eyes looming above him. "Ah, Masterson," it hissed. "I have you at last. What a thorn in my side you've been." Unbelievably, the old preacher laughed. "The serpent suits you, Lucifer. Low creature that crawls with its face in the dirt, shunned by all men." Lucifer hissed venom dripping from his needle-like fangs, smoking where it hit the parched earth. "Fearless as ever, Masterson. But it's you who now lies in the dirt. You're a dying old man, but you could live yet. Join me. Bow before me. Call me Master and King of Kings, and I will spare your life." Again that harsh laugh. "I'd rather fuck a cornhole filled with chili flakes than serve a poor broken-down asshole such as yourself. You're nothing to me but a low-down, mangy dog. Now, get to killing me. You're tired of your yammering." Lucifer howled his outrage and frustration. "Christian," he commanded, slithering away, "kill this fool. I'll not soil myself with his death." Staggering over, my knees weakened. I collapsed on top of him, straddling his broken body. His hand came up, weakly grabbing for my throat, his eyes filled with hate, blood on his lips, but I knocked his clawing hand aside and pinned them beneath my knees. "Who are you?" I screamed into his face. "Who the hell are you, Masterson?" But he didn't answer me, only looked up to the heavens as if listening intently and smiled. "The sons of my son. That'll be the end of you. he growled at me. Now get to killing me if that's what you're gonna do. I bought my ticket to heaven long ago. I ain't afraid of dying none. Besides, I'm already tired of looking at your asshole face. That said, he spat a wad of bloody phlegm right into my face. With a howl of rage, I pulled what was left of the HellBound blade from the dead horse and raised it above my head for the killing strike. But the light had already faded from those hazel blue eyes. He lay there, dead. A small smile frozen on his lips, his eyes turned up, towards heaven. Yeah, you had balls, my friend, I said, wiping his blood from my face. I give you that. You had balls. A groan came just off to my right. It was Harvey Dillon pulling himself through the sand like a broken snake, leaving a trail of sticky blood behind him. Standing, I weaved over to him and knocked him onto his back before straddling his twisted form. I brought what was left of the HellBound blade down, piercing the diseased heart beneath, and sending his loathsome soul straight back to hell. But suddenly, time slowed, and then stopped, before the final blow could land. Please, don't, a voice said to my right. I slowly turned my head, the rest of my body frozen in time. There was an angel kneeling before me. Its great white wings spread across its back, their tips brushing against the sand. Please don't, Mr. Davis. All of creation depends upon the final move. Who are you? I asked, shocked by its beauty and splendor. I'm Gabriel, it said, its beautiful blue eyes boring into mine. I am the messenger of God. Impressive, isn't he? Lucifer laughed, where he had appeared just off to my left. But this time he wasn't in the body of some loathsome beast animal, but in his own beautiful, terrible form, his black wings folded about him as if seeking comfort. I looked from one to the other. In many ways they were the same, but in others terrifyingly different. The angel looked to be full of light and love. Lucifer, on the other hand, was filled with a swirling darkness, and yet he was still more beautiful than the glowing angel, as if his darkness didn't diminish him, but somehow added to his allure. Brother, the angel said, acknowledging Lucifer, who gave the slightest of nods in return. Say what you have to say, Gabriel. Your presence offends me. The angel ignored that and turned to face him once again. He's been lying to you, my son, for he was ever the great liar. He has been using you all this time. From the moment you were born, he's corrupted you, bent you to his will. What are you talking about? I gasped, unable to comprehend. He's put his mark on you the moment you were born, Gabriel continued gently. He marked you as one of his own. It was he who turned you into a mad killer. All those nights in that orphanage, slithering from the shadows, laying under your crib, whispering an endless deluge of obscenities into your poor, innocent mind. Don't you understand? It was him who drove you mad, set you on the path to mayhem, murder. He subvented your free will. But why? I gasped. Why me? What does he want from me? The angel smiled sadly and gently stroked my brow. He wants you to free him, to break the very seals of hell and bring his kingdom to earth. What seals? I said, yelling at him with anger and frustration. I haven't broken any seals. Oh, but you have, my son. 4 so far, and you're on your way to the final one. Then he'll be set free. I looked down at the dying man before me, my knife up his heart. Seals. Seals, you mean him? He's just an escapee, they all were. I sent them back. I didn't have any choice. The angel sighed. Yes, they are escapees. But so much more. You see, in the beginning, when Lucifer was cast down and imprisoned, 5 great seals inscribed with the very word of God were put in place to hold him, confine him. He could not touch them unless he suffered the true death, and he'd be returned back to the universe. But his will is not so easily subvented. If he could not touch them, then he would change them. And so over the long millennia he bent his terrible will towards them until at last they become incorporeal. Much to his frustration, he still could not leave. But perhaps they could. And so he found 5 of the most evil souls in hell and placed them inside, using all of his will, and with the seals somewhat weakened, he made the smallest of cracks between this world and the hell of his own making and set them free. But the seals were never made of this world, and grew even weaker. Yet Lucifer could not lay his hands upon them, or he wasn't willing to try for fear of the true death, and so he groomed you to do it for him. From the moment of your conception, he used you. He put the knife in your hand on earth, put another in your hand in hell, an instrument not forged in hellfire, but forged in heaven. Just as my brother Michael, his sword, so Lucifer had his knife. My brother still bears the scars of its terrible wrath. I looked toward Lucifer, his face impassive. Is that true, you son of a bitch? Is it all true? Every word of it, he smiled. I answered that smile with one of my own. I won't do it. I won't set you free. Not now, not ever. You can rot in hell for all eternity. If that's your decision, I respect it. He nodded thoughtfully. But before you decide, I mean really decide, just ask him one question, he said, nodding towards the glowing angel. That's all I ask, just one tiny question. What question? I spat at him. Ask him if you will go to heaven. I mean, if you stay your hand, you will have defeated God's most hated enemy. You will have saved billions of men, women, innocent children from annihilation. Go ahead, Mr. Davis. Ask him. Will I? I said, turning back to Gabriel. If I do this, if I save the world, if I trap Lucifer, will I finally be at peace? Will I see the face of God? Can I be forgiven? The angel smiled sadly. There can be no redemption for one such as you, my son. Your action condemned you to hell when you murdered all of those innocent people. But you said he made me do it. He stole my free will. He used me, I roared. You said it yourself. He made me do it. They don't care, Lucifer said, falling upon his knees before me and grabbing at my face, my nose almost touching his. Don't you understand? They don't fucking care. Ask yourself, my son, couldn't they have stopped it? Is God not all-powerful? All those nights I whispered into your lonely crib from the depths of my own forsaken hell, could God not have silenced my voice the first time you slit an innocent throat? Could God not have stayed your hand? Yes. Yes, he could, but he didn't. He didn't care enough about you to stop it. Not only. See, only now when it matters do they bother to even acknowledge your existence and try to manipulate you. And what do they offer in return? Nothing. Only an eternity trapped in hell. They simply don't care. Why should you serve them? For the glory of God, huh? He barked a harsh laugh. Is that their reason? is at their best offer. I'm offering you a place by my side. Together, we'll take this world, we'll shape it into our own image. You are my son, Christian. I placed my hand over your heart the moment it let out its first beat. I looked at him and knew for the first time, perhaps in an eternity of existence, he was speaking the truth. I turned to the waiting angel. Tell your God. I said, bite me. No! The angel screamed as I fought off its spell and brought what was left of the HellBound blade whistling down, breaking the final seal. We were standing atop a great hill. Below us, a huge battle raged between angels and demons. In the midst of this fury was a man with a silver sword who raged amongst demonkind, slaughtering all before him. Who's he? I asked Lucifer, who stood beside me watching the battle intently. Masterson, Lucifer growled. Another god-cursed Masterson. Wild card. The eye in the center of a storm. But not to worry, he smiled. He can change nothing. So, what shall we do next? He grinned as the chaos continued below us. I closed my eyes, smelling the ashes, a small smile playing across my lips. Now we set it to burn. Now we burn them all. His hand fell upon my shoulder. It felt good there, like the embrace of an old friend, like a lover's kiss. But best of all, it felt like coming home. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I want to tell you thanks so much for watching tonight's video or listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. Quick reminder, I am also a narrator over at Chilling. If you guys like the stories that you're listening to here, then I'm sure you'll like the stories that you can listen to over at Chilling, because they're almost the same thing. I'm still narrating them, but you can select your own background music or background sounds, and you could select a whole mess of other narrators, such as Autumn Ivy, Swamp Dweller, and a bunch of my other friends. If you guys are interested in checking out Chilling app, starting up with a free trial, you can use the link in the description down below, or you can head over to thechillingapp.com and also use those free trials to win prizes from their giveaways. And as always, I would love to give a big thank you to everyone who's supporting me over on Patreon. You guys are the real MVPs. You guys keep things going, especially while things have been nuts for me over the past couple of months, and things have been getting crazier and crazier as time goes on. You guys are the ones who are keeping me sane, and I mean that with all sincerity, that you guys have helped me immensely. So, in my personal life and my professional life, I want to give a very big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Jacob Fenske, Burnett, Kraus, LaQueda, Canizales, MrCreepyPasta, PebisPleaser, Canis, Joseph Calarrudo, BuddhaBee, Dante, Kinkade, Foxhound 803, Mephistopheles, CursepoxPrimarch, Bastion, Beefcake, Jeff the Killer's Cultist, Love You M, INSANITYGamerX, Cornejo, Yarghoul, Clark, Kearns, himbojerry, SamaHigh, CrusaderChocobo, Adamarius, Captain Scurvy, Estadine, Braden Morris, Nate Cull, Our Min Sect Time, Angelus, Seclude, That Creepy Chick, Red Shadow Cat, Xavier and Cheyenne, 6 Gay Rats in a Trench Coat, Turtleman, Cryolinian, Lord Life's Best, Goring Trimagazine, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Ika Limchok, Dirt Diver 030, Matt Bach, Voice of Sand, Shelly J, Fikamel, Deleted Account, Melted Lake, Tully Sue, William King, Sashi Suzaku, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Hades Nephew, Peter Chip, Acid System, Mog, Kiwi the Sloth, Fester's Lampshade, Nico Kaya, The Ginger Bros, and Stormcrow, Daniel Paulson, and Corey Kenshin. To everyone on this list, everyone in the description, and of course anyone who could support even just $1, thank you all so much for making my life significantly easier with this. And if you guys would like to be able to join any of the names that you see here or down there or anything at all, head over to patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. And with that, I wish you all a very, very pleasant night and sweet dreams.